This is Morten from Inkish. We just had our second session here at the Print Matter event here with Intergraf in Budapest, and that was a quite interesting but also a little bit depressive presentation by Emanuele. So, hey, Emanuele.
Hey.
I'm glad that you can smile. That means that there's something to smile of, right?
Unfortunately, I'm used to this kind of numbers.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can I just, before we talk about the let's say, your presentation was about the declines across commercial printing paper and for the printing industry, basically, right? Just before we talk about the details, am I right when I say that if you look at the mills and the big factories that do the paper, that they have also, in order to work against the financial cost of decline, have moved to, let's say, other types of paper-based products?
Absolutely. There's been a very significant swift and a switch from graphic papers to packaging papers, container building specific, to specialty papers.
Even to energy, right?
Absolutely, even to energy. Actually, if I'm not wrong, UPM, the big Finnish company, is the largest energy provider in Finland through nuclear power.
Right?
It's absolutely.
And as I also asked you after your presentation, I think that a lot of printing companies obviously have experienced the paper price increases. Has that offset the decline, or more or less, or?
Difficult to say. Not completely. It depends very much on a company-by-company basis. As an association, we don't like really to comment on prices. We leave that to the companies directly. Certainly, the situation overall has been quite heavy, also for paper producers, in terms of the cost increase, the inflationary pressure that I received through increasing energy prices mainly. The paper industry is one of the most energy-intensive one, together with ceramics and glass, and then there we are.
I'm asking a little bit because I remember there's always been price increases, of course, because there's always inflation, of course, right? But I remember when I've been looking at some of the big ones, it seems actually that the paper industry as such is not doing so bad, right?
Again, if you look at...
You don't want to admit it, right?
If you look at the number of companies that have gone underwater over the past 5-10 years, or have left the graphic paper, or at least modified, as we were saying earlier, switched outside of that, it's quite significant. So, yeah, some of them are still making money, but the situation is certainly not a happy one, I would say. And it's very volatile. It depends very much on a year-by-year situation with the recurring shocks that we've seen recently, starting from the pandemic. Well, starting from the Great Recession in 2008-2009, pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the war in Iran now. What's next? So it's been a rough ride
and as everybody understands, of course, is that one of the biggest challenges for the paper industry is obviously that you're based on forestry, basically, and that doesn't change because of wars or because of energy prices. So you always have to adjust the order intake based on what you can actually get. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're based on forestry and virgin fibers, but also on recycled fibers, and that I think is a very good story for the paper industry, which it's not necessarily told very often and very clearly to the public, I think, but the efforts in terms of sustainability and then the improvement from that point of view that paper makers have done over the past 10, 20 years is quite remarkable in terms of emission, in terms of utilization of recycled fibers again, in terms of reduction or improvement in the carbon footprint or whatever.
But I was thinking, because we interviewed some from KLS Pure Print in Denmark some years ago, and I know that Pure Print is like almost the extreme of requirements for paper, and they said basically that the problem with recycled paper, you can't really give like specifications on it because it's a different pulp, basically, right? So when you look at the sustainability of recycled paper, is it as good as it is said? Obviously for the reasons you just mentioned, but
there
traceability, for
are applications
example,
that are end users that need to have virgin fibers, of course. If you were to buy a Rolex, I don't know if I can mention a brand here. If you were to buy a Rolex and you want a nice brochure, you probably want it top quality paper on that, coated with free, maybe double coated, triple coated with virgin fibers, nice thick matte or gloss, whatever it is. If you are to print a leaflet or some kind of a leaflet for a supermarket that has to last 2 days because then the offer goes, then you probably can use recycled fibers, and then they don't have a super quality but are good enough to show you the products that they are intended to advertise, basically. So it depends very much on the end product eventually. But utilization of recycled fibers. Newsprint is almost 100% recycled fibers everywhere in Europe nowadays. Newspapers, of course, have gone down quite significantly, as we were saying, but there are applications that are very possible, at least. Certainly, commercial printing is a bit more difficult because it needs a bit more quality, I would say, probably.
Yeah.
So
also because the move to digital is also because it's not all recycled fibers that works equally good in digital printers, right? So
and the quality of the fibers as well.
Yeah.
Because actually that's one of the issues that we're facing. With the reduction of consumption of paper, even if the percentage of recycling is higher, the volumes are smaller. So you need
so you don't get the same volume back, basically.
Exactly. You need to integrate with virgin fibers.
Your presentation, as I said, it was kind of negative, but maybe the better word is realistic, because obviously, as I also asked you, the big catalogs, of course, they go online today. Newspapers are falling. It's not because people don't read newspapers; they just
read it differently.
And as you stated, also was like maybe we sometimes focus too much. Of course, we focus on paper and print, but we should focus on really how we distribute content, right? Where digital and physical goes really well together. So when you look at the numbers, do you have? If you have to deliver a negative kind of presentation every time you go to a presentation, it must also sometimes be a little bit like, oh, I wish I could come with better news, right?
Absolutely. It happens all the time. The thing is, I think we have to get used to the idea, well, it is happening, it has happened already, as a matter of fact, of a smaller business, a smaller companies, a smaller paper industry, but still profitable. It doesn't mean, as we were saying earlier, paper companies are still making money to a certain extent. Maybe not as much as it used to be, but still relatively profitable. The thing is that instead of producing 45 million tons, they're producing 12 million tons, aggregate, of course. It's a new reality. You have to get used to it. And the other positive message I think that we can see at the moment is that demand has gone down so much in certain segments that maybe we are approaching some kind. I don't want to be too optimistic, because you heard how bad I was. But
you're a nice guy anyway, right?
Well, I hope so. But trying to reach some kind of a floor, or at least a reduced exposure to the declining end users. In terms of coated-free paper, for example, the part of magazines and catalogs has gone down so much that their exposure, percentage-wise, will be more into the commercial printing, which is doing better than the editorial part of the business. So in a way, there should be a slowdown in the pace of decline. So not an improvement, but a slowdown in the pace of decline.
Last question, because when I've talked to merchants across both North Europe and Central Europe, and the UK, by the way, it also seems that the merchant at least have a huge interest, of course also because of margins, to focus more and more on the special papers. I guess that also seen from your perspective that when the volumes get so low, of course some of the smaller mills now have a chance to sell more profitable paper because it becomes more exclusive, or how do you see that?
I fully agree, absolutely. And the small mills can focus more on specialty papers, or even within the graphic papers, there are special applications. It depends whether you want to define, but label paper, is that a commodity or is a specialty? That's certainly not a commodity in the old definition. That is a growing market, and that's a lot of companies have, well, maybe not a lot, but several companies have shifted production from regular graphic paper commodity to specialty and label paper, which is still a growing market. So it depends on that.
Emanuele, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice talking to you.